Hello, this is Dr. Myra Salcedo at the University of Texas at the Permian Basin, and actually I'm at home, but I'm going through reviewing a lot of papers and assignments today, and I see students are really struggling with Modern Language Association, MLA style, with in-text citations and the works cited page. Now, you have a built-in textbook in your course, and it has a link to Letter from Birmingham Jail on the picture. You click on Dr. Martin Luther King's colorful picture, and it takes you to his site, his Letter from Birmingham Jail. Now, there's two parts in the book. There's a long introductory section by Clark Moreland. He is a King scholar and works at UTPB, and he wrote a lot of background. So if you're wondering, how are you going to get to 4 pages? Use that background. Introduce King before you start down the road on whether you think his strongest paragraph or strongest paragraphs in the paper appeal to either ethos, pathos, or logos. Pick one. Don't pick all 3. It'll weaken your paper. It'll weaken your argument. Take a stance. He had all 3 in Letter from Birmingham Jail. All 3 rhetorical appeals. He was a master rhetorician. And his last name is King, and he was not a king. Some people make that mistake and say the king in the paper, and I don't know where that comes from, but anyways, he was really born with the name Michael, and his father changed both their names to honor Martin Luther from the Protestant Reformation. So if you just refer to him as Martin Luther, that's another person, another era, another centuries ago. Anyways, if you say Martin Luther King, that is Martin Luther King Jr.'s dad. So you have to have the junior, Martin Luther King Jr. Once you say his name in the paper, his full name in the paper, you don't do it again. After that, it's King. Begin parentheses, King, and page number in parentheses. That's it. I want to see a lot of page numbers, or I need to look at the link and see if it's got the paragraphs numbered, because you have to pick the most important paragraphs, and you have to include in-text citations. So by the time you introduce King, and when you introduce King, you'll be using Clark Moreland's notes, hopefully, his introduction that's in your online textbook. And then you would have begin parentheses, Moreland, page number only, there's no comma in between, in parentheses. So I am using Modern Language Association Style 8, which came out in 2016, which is the latest version, and we always use the latest version at the university. So some teachers you may have been taught you other versions, or like the previous one, since it just changed in 2016. Just about the time you get it down, they make changes. It's supposed to be easier. I don't know. But I'm not on that committee, or I think changing it up is confusing. It is confusing. So if you use Moreland's words, Clark Moreland's words, then you quote Moreland. When you use King's words, then you quote King. You do not quote the editor of the book, which is Kristen Figgins. That comes up on the works cited page. So you must have in-text citations for facts, background, history, and what you don't want to do is overdo it to the point that every sentence has a parenthetical citation, in-text citation, because then your words aren't in there. The whole paper would be somebody else's words, and that's considered a form of academic dishonesty, believe it or not. That you should quote less than 30% of your paper should be other people's words, 15 to 30% of the paper. And the paper needs to be 4 pages down to the bottom. May sound tough, but you will be creating what I call a quote sandwich. Introduce the quote, that's the first layer. Insert the quote. Explain how that quote adds or detracts from your argument. Now, you're not going to be looking at issues that detract from it. That you would do in the research paper, which is the next paper. But first, we got to get through the King paper for Saturday. So I wanted to give you some hints. There are archaic words that aren't used anymore in Letter from Birmingham Jail, like colored and Negro. When King says those words, you quote him exactly. When you use your words, you could say the black community. Some people say African American, but not everybody who's black is African American. And everybody who's white is not American necessarily. You know, you're British, Swedish, whatever. So it's safer to say black and white, which we all know there's shades of gray, especially in arguments at the university level, but be careful with your language when you use the 21st century language. Words, there's people of color, which includes Hispanics, but words like colored have gone by the wayside, and especially Negro. So you don't want to use that when it's your words. And no full page paragraphs, quotations, no full page King quotations. He was long-winded. I believe he has one sentence that is a whole page. And it's very poetic the way he breaks it up and punctuates it. But I don't want to see an entire page that's a quote, because you start getting past, with 4 pages, you start getting past acceptable use of other people's words. You could break up his quotes, and it's more effective to the reader. It's challenging also to have just one paragraph, a whole page with no paragraphs. It's challenging for the reader, and they get lost. So try not to do that also. And for the works cited page, you will be citing your textbook, and I may send that around. You'd be quoting Moreland. That would be one citation on the works cited page. That would be one source. And then when you quote King, that's a second source. So you should have 2 sources at least. If you find academic information other places, that's fine. You could use King's registered site, but it's really hard to find scholarly papers unless you use UTPB library databases, and I haven't really gone over that, and this video is already getting long. Sorry about that. So I just lost my place. So anyways, with you must have a works cited page, and it's going to be separate from your 4 pages. You must complete 4 pages down to the bottom, double spaced, no extra spaces after paragraphs. Check your paragraph in Word and make sure it doesn't say spaces after each paragraph because it defaults to that. It should just be 0 spaces before and after paragraphs, double spaced. 1-inch margins times New Roman font, and you need to have a heading at the top of the paper and last name, page number on each page, including the works cited. You do not need a cover page in MLA style. And I'm trying to think of where students get tripped up the most with King. Oh, I know what I was going to say. It's using websites that are not considered legitimate, like Wikipedia, the History Channel. It's not academic if it doesn't have .edu after it or .gov. Don't use blogs as a source. If you go outside of the textbook, try to find legitimate sources. If you know how to use the database, it's good for you, because that's another video. And if you have questions, I'm all day in the courses today. So just let me know. And it's your first draft is maybe a little confusing. The first draft of your paper is due Saturday night before midnight. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's a rough draft. That's why it's rough. You should have 3 to 4 pages, and no less than 3. And really, you should have 4. It should be a good draft. Put it in. You submit it in the Dropbox, and then Sunday, the computer, once it sees you have a submission, Sunday morning, it's going to give you 2 people to peer review. And then you have until the 17th to complete the peer reviews. And after that, your final draft will be due. So you will get feedback from at least 2 students and from me. And to get your paper to be the best paper that you can write, save copies of it. Don't lose it. It's really hard for me to accept things after the box closes in email because I am overwhelmed with email on a regular day. So I hope that gives you some more ideas. The first page, can have some background, and it's going to be other people's words. And if you use the word ethos, pathos, or logos, you will pick one and go with it and run with it. You must define ethos, pathos, or logos and use the Oxford English Dictionary. So there you go. Now you've got 3 sources for your works cited page. And be really careful not to paraphrase everything to the point of I can't tell your words from the words of others. So those are a lot of tips, and I look forward to reading your work, and let me know if you need anything else. And I will see you at the next video.